Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to AVX Live. I'm Joe Gilderson, President of Corporate Audio Visual Services, and I'm once again joined by my co-host, Mr. Ryan Finch.
Hello. I just turned the air conditioning off. I totally forgot. I blew it. There we go. Now it's hot again.
Man, oh man, a Shevitz. You know, Ryan, I worked with this guy way back when. That's what he used to always say to me. To this day, I have no idea what it means.
Well, I mean, Google exists. Have you tried that?
I have not.
We'll let you know at the end of the show.
End of the show. I mean, maybe somebody wants to chime in, place a comment. We might find out the answer to this.
Hey, that's my line. Not too soon.
Totally stole it. Damn. Listen, Ryan, I have noticed that I have seen your face around town lately, and I'm not sure what this is all about, but somehow it seems that there's been a nomination type of event and that we may find out some results real soon. Is this true?
It is. We are eagerly awaiting. Yeah, I mean, just to be nominated was quite an honor.
And what were you nominated for?
For a BCW Rising Star Award, the 40 under 40 from the Business Council Westchester. And actually, I know a few of the award winners, actually. I know a few of them. Yeah, I'd love to join their company.
I think that would be wonderful. I mean, if you're hanging out with those fine gentlemen there, and of course, I mean, anybody that's got this one going, I mean, I don't know how you can lose, to be quite honest. I mean, I'm just saying.
I didn't see that coming.
Anything is possible.
Man, my mom watches this show and everything.
I'm just trying to, publicize the good news that you've been nominated for such a prestigious award. Hopefully, you hear those results soon.
Yes.
We wish you good luck.
Well, thank you very much.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about today's show. But before we bring on our very special guest, Mr. Finch, tell people what to do.
Okay, you can find us on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, all live, all the time. Actually, not all the time, just Wednesdays at 1 p.m. specifically, just like it's Wednesday at 1:03 p.m. right now. And we were right on time. It's been 3 minutes already. While you're there, you can drop us a comment, be part of a show, just like Joe said earlier. If you have a question, we will answer it live. The beautiful part about doing it live is we can do that. So take advantage. Let us know what you want to talk about. Otherwise, you can find us in little bite-sized pieces after the show on Instagram and Facebook. But in general, whatever platform you're watching, whether it's the snippets, whether it's the live show, like, comment, share, subscribe, all the above, super, super helpful for us. So please continue to show some love. And I think that's it. Yeah. No, it was. Thanks, Marissa. It was an aubergine suit. Aubergine.
Hold on. It was aubergine. No, actually,
Joe, I could just
take
you right out of the show if I need to. So.
I'm just saying. I mean, who knew what aubergine was to begin with?
Aubergine. So there you go. Put that on a banner. First, you have to learn how to spell it.
Yeah, I don't know that. We're not going to risk that one right now.
Good idea.
Normally this is a spot where I would do this very elaborate introduction. We don't have to do that today.
That's true.
Because today we're going to let our guest tell us all about themselves. Ryan, I think you probably have a nice graphic.
Boom! There's the graphic. You're right.
We're going to be bringing on our special guest, Ken Gmoser, in just 3, 2, 1. Ken Gmoser.
Wow, nailed it.
Hi, guys.
Hey there.
You made your cue. That's good.
Okay.
That's real good.
So you want me to tell you a little bit about myself? So, okay. I've been in the hotel, hospitality, AV production world for my whole career. Started out working in hotels in New York, upstate New York. Went down to Washington, D.C., was down in D.C. for about 4 years, working in convention service management in hotels, right by the convention center. These are all big meeting hotels. My first hotel was actually working at the Concord Hotel. Some of you might know or remember that, which was in the Catskills up in Monticello. It's not there anymore. It's been torn down. It was a massive hotel and 3,000 acres, 3 golf courses, 100,000 square feet of exhibit space, about 100,000 plus square feet of meeting space, a ballroom that sat 3,000 people. So it was a great place to start learning and get really involved in our industry. It was.
Ken, did
yeah.
you ever work with a gentleman named Rob Friedland up
I
there?
sure did. As a matter of fact, Rob Friedland worked at the Concord Hotel. He was. I started out at the Concord as the director of audiovisual, and Rob actually was one of my technicians at the time. And I did that job briefly. It was sort of a stepping stone to getting into convention service management. I moved into convention service management, and Rob became the director there. So yeah, very exciting. I know we all know Rob and love Rob. He's a great guy.
Absolutely.
And but that was a fun place to work too, because we all hung out together. It was, hotel industry can be tough. It's that job, everybody worked 6 days a week. That was standard. Your day off usually was a Wednesday or something, because a lot of weekend activity.
Prince Spaghetti Day.
And yeah, and but good learning experience. And if it's where Resorts World Catskills is now. If you've been there, that's where the Concord was. It's actually basically on the property right next to it, where it was. So, but. And that's where I started out. I went to DC. I worked at the Renaissance Tech World, which is a hotel in DC, convention service management, very much connected with the convention center itself. We did a lot in conjunction with events at the hotel, with things tied to whatever was going on at the convention center. Met my wife there, and she wasn't my wife at the time, but met my current wife there. We got married in DC, and right up the street from the White House. And we're still married today, 30 years later. So
that's great.
Anyway, then I'm from New York. So after being in DC, we were spending a lot of time coming back and forth to New York, visiting family and friends and that kind of thing. And I decided to move back here, and ended up at a hotel in Stamford for a while, and then ended up at the Millennium Broadway, which is a hotel in New York City, right in Times Square. I was there for 10 years as the director of the convention center, conference center. Big place too. 37 meeting rooms, tied in with the Hudson Theater, which is a Broadway theater, which basically was our ballroom. And that's where all the big events happened. And then did that for, as I said, for about 10 years. Then I went over to PSAV. And I was a regional director for them, regional director of operations in the New York metropolitan area, overseeing hotels. And I was there for 15 years, and over 15 years, things changed. There were periods where I oversaw all the New York City hotels, of about 25 of them, all union environment. There were other times where I oversaw half the city, and the suburbs. All the suburban hotels are non-union. So a good mix of big hotels, Waldorf, Hilton, New York, Sheraton, New York, smaller hotels like, the Sheraton Stamford, all shapes and sizes and different things. So that was, a real operational challenge at many times, because there's so many different things you have to consider. But what's always the most important thing is the customer. And when you're working, particularly when you're working in hotels and here at corporate AV too, the customer experience is what counts the most. If things have to go right the first time, you don't have a second chance in the AV world. It's got to be right from the get-go.
All right.
So, and then we're all have the challenge now of getting back into it post-COVID. Even though we're not really post-COVID, but we all know where we're at right now. Right. And seeing those, challenges we have to consider as we see our industry come back to life.
All right. So you're as a newcomer to the AV world, are you liking it so far?
Yeah, well, I'm not a newcomer to the AV world.
I was kidding, Ken. That was a bold-faced joke. Yeah, I do have to pause for a second, because this piqued my interest. A green key. Does that ring a bell for you at the Concord Hotel?
A green key? Yeah. Well, the green keys were the little key fob that would be attached to the Concord had keys. There was, right. For all the hotel guest rooms. It wasn't electronic locks.
Oh wow.
And yeah, all the key.
Right, that's before your time.
Plastic.
I was gonna say.
Probably, about that big key fob, with a room number printed on it and the key.
Okay.
And then people lost them, and then we'd have to.
I don't know if Ryan's ever seen actual keys to hotel rooms.
No, and now I'm imagining there's somebody walking through the hallways with just a belt full of keys.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
100%.
Wow, look at that. Things have changed, clearly.
Just think of when you go to the gas station in the bathroom.
Right.
And there's a big brick tied.
A big wooden block. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, the guy that was our lead houseman, the guy that set up all the meeting rooms and everything, he had exactly that. He had that ring of keys, with like, probably no exaggeration, 25 keys on it.
So there's no master key. I've heard so much about the master key.
No one could ever find them, They were around. They were the mysterious, elusive, we've heard of them, but we don't know where they are. So, yeah, no, it's the hotel world's been my life. I love it. The hospitality event industry, what we do here is in my blood. It's for all of us that do this, I think we all get a lot of excitement out of it and a lot of satisfaction from seeing something go from someone's concept and desire to be a reality and, of course, to be successful.
But, question, didn't you come out of school studying journalism?
Yeah, I did. I went into journalism not to be a journalist, but I went into journalism to be a photojournalist. I was really into photography and at the time, and this was, I'm dating myself, of course, pre-digital photography.
Ryan doesn't know about that either.
Yeah. And so I went to college for photojournalism, but that is tied into the School of Journalism. So when I was in college, I realized I didn't want to be a photojournalist because it was at the time a lot of time spent in a dark room and a lot of time spent. It was a hobby that I didn't want it to become a career. I'm still very much into photography. I love it, but I didn't want to make a career out of it. So what I did when I was in college, though, is I got very involved. I got really involved with student organizations in college. And I ended up by my senior year being in charge of the Spring Music Festival, which had about 10,000 people attend it. It was a big, concert out in the field. I was in charge of what was called the Center Program Board at the time, which planned all the guest speakers and the student union, all the concert series throughout the school year. So what it did was it got the meeting concept, the event planning concept into my blood. So when I got out of college, yeah, I didn't want to look for a job in journalism. I wanted to look for a job in the meeting industry, and I didn't really know, what that really meant. And then I found my path by starting to work in hotels, and it's very exciting.
Interesting. Well, you know what? It's funny you touch on your hobby, not wanting to make that a career. I don't know if Joe has ever told you this, but in terms of the people that he's always looked for to join the organization, they always come from some sort of related, field or looking for that core interest in show business in a sense, right? So your path, fine, photojournalism. Some folks are musicians. Some people are theater people. But finding that kind of path into the show of it. I mean, were there any were you ever presenting your photos and you were like, well, I don't really like the photo part, but this presentation thing is awesome?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you had to, in college when you take classes, when you're doing photography, it's all about your portfolio, and you'd have to get up and present and do those kind of things. But it's interesting you mentioned theater because theater has been in my life, in my world, my whole life.
I didn't know that.
I have a very theatrical parents who brought us to. I went to my first opera when I was in third grade. I swear that.
What was it? I think that's already more than I've been to.
Yeah, yes, and I still go. My mother's still going to the opera, and opera theater. We were very much actively going to Broadway shows, actively. Going to the Philharmonic and whatnot. So, and in addition to that, I got very involved with summer theater. at, local community theater, those kinds of things. And I think you're right, Ryan. It's people in our industry certainly do it because if they're doing it because they love it, they also love other aspects of it too. Some people like to be on the stage and be that performer. I find though that many of the people in our industry would rather be behind the scenes and would rather use their talents where they're most comfortable. But you're absolutely right. There's an awful lot of musicians too in our
Yes,
yeah.
there are. Now, Joe, did you have any idea that Ken was this cultured?
I don't remember seeing that in the resume. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm feeling a little undercultured. Right
I was going to say, I feel the same way right now.
I mean, my definition of culture is let's go Celtics.
Oh.
That's what we're talking about. Come on.
Ken, I had to know that was coming, right?
Come on. Just saying. Okay. Hey, I did notice that there's a comment, Ryan. If you can
see, Joe, you know what? We said we were going to save it for the end, but now you've gone and blown it. So here we go. Thank you, Jim Marlowe. In 1973, Apollo 17 astronaut Gene Cernan shouted,
Manischewitz.
There it is. The Matzah Company slogan in the middle of his moonwalk.
Wow.
So there you go. That's where it came from.
Historical reference.
Historical. Now I'm cultured, too. That's all it took, as it turns out. I went to Broadway a couple times.
You mean this wasn't cultured?
Come on. That's it. You're out of the show. And goodbye. He's out of the show now. So, Ken, what else is new, man? All right, you're back. Fine.
That's okay, Ken. So, in a more serious nature, you've come from a previous role in a larger organization. I mean, you're starting to see some, I would imagine, distinct differences, coming to a smaller organization like Corporate AV and Visual Word. I mean, what are some of the differences that you're noticing or some of the parts that you like?
Yeah, it definitely is a different world. It's the same business, but with a different business approach to it. It's our world, my world today is much more everybody does everything to help each other out and really participate to be part of a solution. Everybody's got a role to do, but it's not necessarily a focused role. In a bigger company, it can get really caught up with numbers and sort of lose sight of what we're all about sometimes. And it's not that big corporations are bad. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's just a very different approach. In my previous world with some of the bigger companies that I work for, we got so caught up in numbers and in tracking things and monitoring people that you sort of lose a little bit of the connection to the customer. And, we would have plenty of people to connect with the customer, but what I'm saying is, the me and my role was sometimes a little more distant than I wanted to be. Whereas in a company this size, it's much more, as I said, hands-on, much more personable, much more all about the customer as it should be. Differences, though, bigger companies have much better training programs and much better operational systems in place that they need to have in order to be successful because they are a big organization. You're handling 250 employees at a time, not 15, so it's just a different approach. Same with learning new systems or rolling out new systems. It needs to be much more structured and universal because also, most people are remote, so for instance, my previous role as a regional director, a regional VP of operations, every person that was my direct report, I didn't work with directly. They were remote. They were the directors in the hotels, and I would see them as I traveled around, and we try to pull them together for meetings, director meetings, once a quarter. But it's the meeting business and the hotel business, and a lot of times people couldn't attend because they were just busy, and it's a busy time. So, our industry is interesting too. Like right now is a really busy time for everybody. So there's no time for training. There's no time for, real solid group meetings. in July, there will be plenty of time for that. But in July, everybody wants to take time off because they've been working so hard, and that's understandable too.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely a big difference between large and small, no question about it. I'm sure many people have had that experience. Yeah, it even is the case with large meeting venues and smaller ones. Just how they're handled. Suburban properties are very different than city properties, whether it's a hotel or a restaurant or just a meeting venue. Those differences, and I think it's important for all of us to understand that you have to approach how you handle something in the city is a very different way than handling something in the burbs. It's simple things: where you're going to park the truck, and how are the people going to get into the building, and what's the security, and all those things. And then in this day and age, what are their COVID, requirements and vaccinations and things like that. So
yeah, well, you touched on a lot of good points, and Joe, that's not what he said. That's not what he said. That's a terrible thing to put on a banner.
I don't
burn bridges, Joe.
Wow.
I did not do that.
And he's leaving it up for so long, too. Oh, my God.
I can't believe he set me up like that.
I did. Ken, that was me. I couldn't help myself. But no, you know what? You touched on a lot of good points, and there certainly are differences, coming from whether it's a big company or small company or a metropolitan property or something suburban. This actually plays very nicely into another question that we had for you, which is from an operations perspective, right? Imaginably, the operations of a small company looks very different from an operations of a big company, but success is success, right? And I think really what we're getting at here is what does, regardless of size, what does a successful organization look like to you from an operations standpoint?
Yeah. Success is, it's all about the happiness of the customer and repeat business, repeat customers. As we all know, it's the hardest thing to do is find a new customer. The simplest thing to do is retain an older customer and, an existing customer and provide great service. From an operational standpoint, I think, big or small, it all comes down to the success of each and every event, and that really comes down to, for me anyway, is being, maybe not literally, but being in the room. In other words, you got to be connected to something and follow it through. And if you're not going to be the one in the room to make it happen, you want to make sure that you have the right people in the room that can make it happen. It's just so important to have that connection. Doesn't matter whether you're a big company or a small company. What matters is the person in the room. So for all of us, we plan, we coordinate, we implement, but it's so important that in our world that the technician in the room is the right guy or the right woman to do the job, to make sure and absolutely handle anything that comes up. Problems are going to happen, but how do you handle it? How do you get through it? What's the success? Does the customer come up at the end and say, "That was awesome, thank you so much"? It's I don't think it's much different, big, small, medium size. It's all about getting it right the first time, because as we said a few minutes ago, you only got one shot at it.
It's funny that you say that. That used to be one of the questions that I would ask when interviewing technical staff. Say, well, how do you know if you did a good job? And the difference would be from someone who is not as client focused, they would say, well, if nobody complained or if I didn't hear anything. And I'm like, that doesn't mean you did a good job. That doesn't actually mean anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So whereas when you see a lot of our events and clients, there's a lot of people that we've worked with for a long time.
Yep.
And we go from place to place with them, and where they're acting voice all the time. Yeah. So we have extremely close relationships with everyone, and most of our clients I would consider friends. Mm-hmm. So it's just such a different energy. Mm-hmm. And everybody literally in the entire Eastern Seaboard knows Maurice Johnson. So
right.
He's internationally famous.
Yeah. Yeah, Mo is great. He sure is. That's just it. It's Mo and the rest of the team here. It is the dedication that they have, the happiness you see in them when they're on the job, that they are happy to be doing their job and happy to make the customer happy and kind of do whatever it takes to get it done.
It's a lot of happy. There you go.
Happy is good.
Yeah.
It's interesting that in your description of a successful operations, I didn't hear there's no numbers, there was no profit margin, or there's no, costs are up or blah, 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 blah. It was, in my estimation here, it came down to the right people and happy customers.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you still got to make money. I mean,
of course, but
we're all here for that too.
Starting there and letting the chips fall where they may.
The customer wants the event to go. One of the hardest things to do, I think, is when an event's over and you have to circle back with the customer because the recording got screwed up or the technician, something went wrong there. Nobody wants money off their bill because something went wrong. They would much rather pay the full bill and have everything perfect. And that's what I think we all need to strive for all the time, is that everything is perfect. Everything went as planned. Any problems that popped up, we rose to that challenge and corrected it. And the customer is completely satisfied. The bills, what we do is expensive. It's a lot of high-tech equipment. It's got to be moved all over the place. The staffing is expensive. Labor is the biggest expense we're going to have, But again, you're right, Ryan. It's having the right people in the right place at the right time.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned some of these things because we're literally in a room right now for 3 straight days. It's like 4 different shows. We're moving everything from one wall to the other 4 times at this point,
Yeah.
And in some ways it's actually more complicated.
Yeah.
Than what we would normally do. But either way, you mentioned something that kind of just reminded me. Like, I think the entire events and hospitality industry right now is feeling stressed. There's a lot of challenges going on, whether it's staffing shortages, COVID rules, ramping up, but there's a new kind of landscape to it. I guess over the course of time working in all those different roles, you must have learned many different ways to adapt and to overcome obstacles. I mean, are there any lessons you think you might have picked up along the way that would help people?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can't be respected by people unless you respect them. And I think it's very important to know your team and to know the people that what they're, more than just their name. You got to get to know people and you got to encourage them. But you also, to retain people is something that you need to do more than just be nice to them. You need to give them a role, hold them accountable to what their role is, be sure that they understand what their responsibilities are, congratulate them when they do things right, but also correct them if they aren't doing things the way it needs to be done. So I think that, as we are all, as you said, we're all struggling with labor. It's a very tight, weird labor market right now. There are a lot of people not wanting to take some of these jobs, and of course we're all busy at the same time. So the labor pool is rather tight, and I think that the more we can retain people, I mean, the more Maurice Johnsons we can have, the better. And
I don't know if his wife would feel the same way. I've known her for a long time.
Right.
Sorry, Wanda.
Yeah. No, I think, I mean, it's an ever-changing world too. What we did 10 years ago, we can't do today. It's a whole different thing. Also, it's a generational thing too. Younger people coming into this have different needs than people who, may be older and have a different approach to it. Also, certainly in our world, the technology continues to change every day. And, we just came through a very interesting 2+ years with hybrid meetings and figuring out how to make that happen and how it can be successful. And we did that, and that's awesome. And now it's you can see it. It's morphing away from that a little bit now. It's still happening, but it's now these more in-person meetings, which is great. I really think that's where it's all going to get back to, with people want to see each other's face to face, talk to them, and have that connection.
Ryan, I just had a thought while Ken's bringing this up. We should totally do this show on the road. We could pick an event site and add an event, and we could do this right from the event.
There you go.
I'm just saying.
We have the technology.
Right.
We do.
Wow. Well, that's an interesting idea.
I'm an idea person.
Apparently. Yeah. Well, Ken, I appreciate the points you'd made. Joe, that's not what he said. That's not what he said.
Those are not the things that I write. Oh my gosh!
Wow, jeez.
I mean, Fitch, I write things like this.
Yeah, you can see. You can see there's a clear divide in the kinds of comments that are coming through. But no, but I appreciate the fact that your focus then again returned to the people. I think that is easily lost in a business that relies so heavily on technology, right, and gear and equipment and trucks. Yeah. That it really ends up being the people more than anything else that create successful, positive experiences. And I think that's, again, something that's easily lost. And it's also something that supersedes big, small, urban, rural, suburban, or otherwise. Mm-hmm. And it always comes back to the people. But speaking of the people, the clients are a big, a big part of that people term, right? The focus on the clients and their experience being paramount to us. You've spent a lot of time in hospitality. What do you think are the most important? And I know you've touched on some of them, but what do you think are the most important aspects of really keeping a client happy over time, right? Developing long-term relationships. You say, okay, you really only get one shot at things. Well, do you get one shot every single time, each and every time for a period of years, or is it a little bit more nuanced than that? What do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, building that long-term relationship, as you both said, is here we certainly have customers that have been with us for many, many years, and that is more than just maintaining a relationship when they haven't, when they call with a need. It's really, I think they need to know how much we care, how much we want their business, but also want to partner with them, that so that it's not just generally, there's always going to be one-off events, but to build a relationship with the customers that are, long-term and successful. People want to know that when they have something that's a little bit beyond their need, their means, be it technology-wise or equipment-wise or whatever, they know immediately who to call, who they can trust, who they can count on to make sure that it's going to get done. One of the hardest things, sure, you can Google, audio-visual provider and you end up with something, but you don't know what you're getting. Whereas once we can get a customer to be with us, and when we can win that first event with them together, they now have a place to go. They have someone that they know they can rely on. Just like we all go to our favorite restaurants, and we all, because we know what we can expect, we all probably have our favorite pizza parlor that we order a pizza from because we know what it is. We know what we like. We know what what it's going to cost. We like the feeling of it. It's the same probably in every industry, that that connection of making the customer feel comfortable. Some of our customers are very large, have multi events every year. Others may just have an occasional event, and they need to know that we're here and ready for them.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things that we think about a lot, right, is sometimes it is very much you're only as good as your last event, right? Yeah. But there are also times where just the nature of the work that we do, that technology is inherently flawed just by itself, and we find that how we adapt and respond to things that maybe don't go perfectly matter just as much, if not more, than the times when it does go perfectly, right? Like how you actually respond as a person. Are there any experiences that you've had that kind of bring that home, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said earlier, it's all about being in the room, whether literally or figuratively, because when things are going to go wrong, you got to respond very, very quickly. I think that again, it really circles back to the team. It really circles back to communication, so that people are aware of what's going on. for our meeting industry world, I think there's just so many opportunities where things could fail, and you got to try and anticipate, and you got to try and get ahead of it, so that, you know, if something happens, first of all, hopefully it won't, but if it does, we're ready for it. And with the size and scope of how many people need to be involved and how many details there are, you know, I think it's just so important that we all communicate, so that we know what's going on. You know, and when busy times like today, tomorrow, and this week, and it's all that much more important to carve out a few minutes to make sure we're all on the same page, we're all shooting at the same target. You know, I've certainly seen events that have had some failures, and you also need to learn from those failures and do everything you can to ensure, you know, if you're not learning from a failure, then that's even worse. You know, particularly in a venue, you know, getting to know the venues, getting to know the ins and outs, all those connections are just, you know, there's a lot of moving parts and pieces to this puzzle, and we got to figure out how to, you know, keep them all together all the time. And we have a lot of partners too. You know, we have to partner with all the venues that we're in addition to all the customers that we're helping, and all the presenters. You know, the presenters that are very nervous to get on stage or very comfortable to get.
Man, you're making it sound like a lot of work.
You kind of read the room. Yeah.
I mean, but you're 100% right. It is.
Yeah.
You have to interact with everyone, and we're kind of like coordinating and, you know, an orchestra here. But
right.
You know, these are all really great points. I have a forecasting question for you, and this is pretty tough, you know. But you've been in the industry. I mean, you've done a lot over the years. Where do you see it going? Any trends you see coming this post-pandemic era?
Yeah, well, like I said before, I really think people want to get back to it. People want the normalcy back of our industry and their world and the togetherness. And, you know, it was working well. It wasn't like pre-COVID, you know, meetings were stumbling and falling. Things seemed to keep growing and getting bigger and better. And technology is certainly something that I think people have now embraced. If you think about what technology was, you know, back up 15 years, it's so completely different today. We wouldn't be able to do this, you know, what we're doing right now, you know, back then. And now look where it is. So
we're like wizards here.
You know,
wizards.
Well, where's it going? You know, so, you know, what will we be doing 15 years from now?
Right.
To you know, meet and connect. My forecast for the future is I think it looks very bright. I think the world has learned to adapt to this post-COVID environment. And I mean, you just think back to 2 years ago, and we were all sort of, you know, huddled down, hiding from this, and because we needed to be, and how much things have evolved in those 2 years to where we are today. And we're not out of it, but, you know, there seems to be much more of a calmness to, and a little bit of a return to normalcy for our industry, which I think is great. But I like I said before, you really got to also remember that there is this concern out there. And how do we factor that into all the things that we do? You can't, I mean, if your personal opinion is that, you know, COVID's done, that doesn't mean that's everybody's opinion. You know? Right. So, you know, you know, I'm certainly hopeful that we're going to continue to grow. You know, there's lots of weird things that pop up, you know, this current situation with this new variant and things like that. But, you know, I really think that things are turning around. You know, it has to. It's very bizarre to walk through New York City, you know, back up 6 months, and you walk past some of these hotels that are shuttered because they had to close during COVID. And you know, it's just the vibe and the beat. Go into New York City now, and it's quite different. It really, you can feel it coming back to life, and you can feel it really, you know, the energy is back and people are out. It helps that it's coming into summertime and the weather's beautiful and we all want to be outside too. So.
Well, you know, that you bring up a good point. I mean, you're really taking over our New York City office, which is down 37th between 8th and 9th. How do you think having an office and a warehouse in Midtown New York City is going to help us to deliver successful results to the clients.
Yeah, visual words are really exciting opportunity. I think where our office is located is awesome. It's right there. We can, we can be down the block from our customers and ready to help them whenever they need it. Like I said before, it's about being in the room. Well, it's also about being present and being available and being ready to go. Having the equipment right there. I mean, we do a great job of it now, bringing it from the Elmsford office into the city and whatnot. But just the ease of the movement of having things right there at our fingertips is great. I mean, we're going to have the right team of people there to help. And again, like we said before about working in a city location or suburban location, we're going to have to take a different approach there. Look at all the experiences we had pre-COVID with that office being open. Count on the good ones, bring back the good ones, and then look at new opportunities and sort of look where are we at in the world today? What do we need there? What equipment do we need? Our client base, all those things, and really. It's a very exciting time to know that we're going to be there and, ready to tackle anything that comes along.
There you go. I mean, that does sound like the future looks bright.
It does. Hey, now that one I'll agree with.
Okay, there we go. We got one.
You mean, but not this one.
Right.
No, well, I mean, it's a tough look. Well, and the other nice part, Ken, is that you're only a few blocks from Madison Square Garden, the world's most famous arena.
Yeah, which means there, Ryan?
Well, in the year 2022, 2023, it's where the Rangers will be lifting the Stanley Cup. You heard it here first.
Wow.
There we go.
There you go.
There's my forecast.
Yep.
That's good. Very nice.
Ken, you're a New York native, you said, right?
Yeah.
Have we even talked about sports? I don't even think, because I feel like every time I talk to somebody, they're like, oh yeah, I'm a Boston guy, and I'm like, here we go. I'm gonna just take myself out of the show. Anyway, we'll talk offline.
We'll cover that on another show.
There you go.
But listen, Ken, this has really been very informational. I mean, there's so many things I didn't know about you.
Yeah, there you go. My pleasure.
I love it. Well, we're going to cover lots more in the future, and I'm sure that you'll be coming back again. But for right now, we got to get this show closed up because we have some projects we got to work on.
We got some work to do.
Amen.
I'm out the door in 5 minutes. So.
Yeah. Oh, good timing.
All right, there you go. Well, Ken, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
We will be seeing you shortly.
Thanks, Ken.
Well, Mr. Finch, I think we've learned a lot today.
We certainly have.
I mean, first off, we learned that Ken does not pronounce the G in Gmoser. I think that's pretty important.
Real G's move in silence like lasagna.
Wow. Did that just happen? We learned that providing great service, the way to retain long-term clients. I don't know what you're doing, man. We learned, you got to appreciate people, provide them guides, but hold them accountable, right? I think the most important thing, though, is that the future looks bright.
Amen.
That's why Ken's here, and we're happy to have him here.
Amen. Absolutely.
Mr. Finch, anything you'd like to wrap this show up with?
Only my usual.
Okay, well, why don't you tell people that?
Okay, well, you can find us on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on YouTube Live, Wednesdays, 1 p.m. While you're there, drop us a comment, be part of the show, and we will try to answer your questions live. Like, comment, share, subscribe, all the above. Please do it. It is super helpful. We want you to, and we appreciate the love. Other than that, keep an eye out for highlights on Facebook, on Instagram, little sound bites, snippets, video bites, if you will, shark bites maybe. Other than that, yeah, just stay tuned here, and we'll be back to you next Wednesday, 1 o'clock.
Sounds good. Well, everyone, I think we're out. Thank you very much. And you know what to do Thursday night, 9 o'clock in Boston.
Let's go Golden State!
Celtics. Let's go Celtics.